So, the modern football landscape is often a depressing reflection of extreme wealth. We live in an era of state-backed sovereign wealth funds, American billionaire consortiums, and hyperinflated broadcasting rights, where the clubs with the most money almost universally lift the trophies at the end of the season. Financial dominance has created a closed shop at the top of the European game, leaving the rest of the footballing pyramid fighting for absolute scraps. But every once in a while, a tactical mastermind steps into the dugout and completely shatters the natural order of the sport. These are 5 managers who looked at the massive financial gaps, ignored the impossible odds, and used tactical innovation, psychological warfare, and raw belief to outsmart the giants. If we are talking about defying the odds, we have to start with the ultimate modern fairy tale. In July 2015, Leicester City appointed a 63-year-old Italian manager named Claudio Ranieri. At the time, the footballing world treated this appointment as a massive, unforgivable joke. Ranieri had just been sacked by the Greek national team after an embarrassing, humiliating defeat to the Faroe Islands. Furthermore, Leicester City had barely survived relegation from the Premier League the previous season, requiring a miraculous run of form in their final 9 games just to stay in the top flight. British bookmakers gave Leicester 5,000 to 1 odds to win the league, essentially stating it was mathematically more likely for the Loch Ness Monster to be discovered than for Leicester to lift the trophy. Leicester was competing in the same league as clubs like Manchester City, Chelsea, and Manchester United, who boasted wage bills exponentially higher than the modest setup at the King Power Stadium. Ranieri looked at his squad and realized that trying to play slow, possession-based football against teams with vastly superior technical players would be tactical suicide. Instead, he implemented a lethal, fast counter-attacking system that relied on defensive solidity and explosive, direct transitions. He anchored his midfield with a £5.6 million signing from the French second division named N'Golo Kanté, a player whose incredible stamina made it look like Leicester was playing with an extra man on the pitch. Behind him, the physical defensive pairing of Wes Morgan and Robert Huth threw themselves in front of everything, while Kasper Schmeichel marshaled the goal. Up front, Ranieri unlocked the ultimate underdog story in Jamie Vardy, a striker who had been playing non-league amateur football just a few years prior. Vardy went on to break Ruud van Nistelrooy's historic record by scoring in 11 consecutive Premier League matches, while Riyad Mahrez provided 17 goals and 11 assists to win the PFA Player of the Year. Leicester City finished the league with 81 points, a massive 10 points clear of second-place Arsenal, capturing its first top-flight league title in the club's 132-year history. Moving over to Italy, we find a manager who turned a provincial yo-yo club into a terrifying European powerhouse. When Gian Piero Gasperini arrived at Atalanta in June 2016, the club from the small city of Bergamo, with a population of just 120,000, had one primary ambition every single season: avoid relegation. Atalanta simply could not afford to buy the global superstars that lined the squads of Juventus, Inter, and AC Milan. Gasperini realized that to compete with that kind of financial muscle, he had to completely overwhelm his opponents with relentless physical intensity and numerical overloads. Gasperini instituted a highly aggressive man-to-man high-pressing system utilizing a bold 3-4-3 or 3-5-2 formation. It was an incredibly demanding tactical setup that turned relatively average or discarded players into absolute machines on the pitch. He revived the careers of mercurial attackers like Papu Gomez and Josip Ilicic, while turning Duvan Zapata into a lethal target man. Atalanta became the most entertaining team in the country. In the 2019 to 2020 Serie A season, Gasperini's underdog squad scored a staggering 98 goals, the highest in the league in over 60 years, and reached the quarter-finals of the Champions League on a shoestring budget, only losing to Paris Saint-Germain in the dying minutes. He led the club to 3 consecutive third-place finishes in Serie A, proving his system was entirely sustainable. But his absolute crowning achievement came in May 2024. After 8 years of meticulously building and rebuilding his squad with cheap, under-the-radar signings, Gasperini led Atalanta to the UEFA Europa League final in Dublin. Facing a Bayer Leverkusen side that had not lost a single match in 51 games all season, Atalanta executed a flawless tactical masterclass. Thanks to a hat-trick from Ademola Lookman, they won 3-0, lifting their first-ever European trophy and destroying an invincible aura. Our third manager takes us to Spain, to a man who completely broke a historic duopoly through pure grit. For over a decade, Spanish football was a closed 2-team monopoly. Real Madrid and Barcelona hoarded the television revenue, bought the absolute best players on the planet, and lazily passed the league title back and forth. When Diego Simeone arrived at Atlético Madrid in December 2011, the club was completely disorganized, drowning in debt, and viewed entirely as the eternal, suffering losers of the Spanish capital who had not won a league title since 1996. Simeone instantly changed the psychological fabric of the institution. He introduced a philosophy that became known as Colismo, demanding absolute commitment, dark arts, and brutal physical conditioning. Simeone built a defensive fortress, employing a compact and flawlessly drilled 4-4-2 block that was an absolute nightmare for technical teams to break down. He turned players like Diego Godin, Koke, and Thibaut Courtois into world-class competitors who thrived on suffering without the ball. The results were staggering and immediate. He won the Europa League in 2012, and the following year, he beat Real Madrid in their own stadium at the Santiago Bernabeu to win the Copa del Rey. But the true miracle happened in the 2013 to 2014 season. Competing directly against a Barcelona side featuring Lionel Messi and a Real Madrid side featuring Cristiano Ronaldo, Simeone's gritty squad refused to yield. On the final day of the season, Atlético traveled to the Camp Nou needing a draw against Barcelona to win the league. Despite falling behind early, Diego Godin scored a bullet header to secure a 1-1 draw, winning La Liga with 90 points. And despite being a heavily criticized coach, Simeone proved that hard work could indeed beat millions of euros. We then must look at the most recent, and arguably the most technically perfect, miracle of our generation. Before October 2022, Bayer Leverkusen was known across Germany by a cruel nickname, Neverkusen. This mocking title haunted the club because of their painful decades-long history without a single major title. When a young, entirely unproven Xabi Alonso was appointed as head coach, Leverkusen was sitting in 17th place in the Bundesliga, staring directly at the nightmare of relegation. From Neverkusen to Neverlusen, Xabi Alonso led Bayer Leverkusen to a first Bundesliga title without suffering a single defeat. Alonso had never managed a top-flight senior team before, making the appointment a massive gamble by the board. Alonso implemented a beautiful, fluid 3-4-2-1 possession-based system. He utilized highly aggressive attacking wingbacks in Alejandro Grimaldo, who registered 10 goals and 13 assists, and Jeremy Frimpong, who added 9 goals and 7 assists in the league. This wide threat was anchored by the elite midfield control of Granit Xhaka and the creative brilliance of Florian Wirtz. Alonso saved them from relegation in his first few months, but his first full season in 2023 to 2024 cemented his legendary status. Operating with a fraction of Bayern Munich's massive wealth, Alonso's team played a brand of football that was completely unplayable. Leverkusen did not just win their first ever Bundesliga title to end Bayern Munich's 11-year monopoly. They went completely undefeated in the domestic league with 28 wins and 6 draws, becoming the first German team in history to achieve an invincible season. They went on a staggering European record-breaking 51-game unbeaten run across all competitions. It was a masterclass in modern tactical coaching. Finally, we travel back to the early 2000s to a manager who proudly labeled himself as the special one. In January 2002, FC Porto was struggling deeply in the Portuguese league, sitting in a dismal 5th place. The board took a major gamble and hired a brash, intensely confident young manager named José Mourinho. Upon his arrival, Mourinho did not ask the fans for patience or time to build a project. He boldly promised the media that he would make Porto champions the very next year. He delivered on that promise spectacularly, winning a treble in his first full season, claiming the Portuguese league with a record 86 points, the Domestic Cup, and the UEFA Cup. But his true miracle occurred the following year in the 2003 to 2004 UEFA Champions League. European football at the time was dominated by mega-rich Galactico squads. Porto's budget was tiny in comparison, yet Mourinho relied on a core of disciplined, homegrown Portuguese talent. He built the team around Deco pulling the strings in midfield, Costinha doing the dirty work, Ricardo Carvalho leading a rock-solid defense, and Benny McCarthy providing the goals up front. Mourinho's tactical preparation was light years ahead of his time, employing deep defensive blocks and devastating transitional attacks. He completely shut down Sir Alex Ferguson's Manchester United in the knockout stages, marching all the way to the final in Gelsenkirchen where Porto dismantled AS Monaco 3-0. Winning the Champions League with a team outside of Europe's top 4 leagues was considered almost mathematically impossible, yet Mourinho turned Porto into the undisputed kings of Europe, launching his own legendary career in the process. These 5 managers proved that while money heavily influences the modern game, it does not hold a complete monopoly on success. Through tactical genius, flawless scouting, and the sheer force of personality, they showed that in the world of football, miracles can happen very often.